So how will we pay for the $80 million? And I'm going to move quickly with this because I already touched on this, but I'll speak a little bit more, I think, on the funding sources themselves. I did speak about the total debt service of $5.3 million, split between $4.7 million on the event center and just under $700,000 on the amenities or utilities. The utilities side will be funded through Community Works for the $672,000. We will be coming back to Council through the Finance and Audit Committee with a proposal asking that Council explore a tax increment financing approach. And the reason we want to do this is the model will help that, as we believe that this project will be a catalyst for redevelopment of obviously the South Downtown, but the downtown in general. So the uplift in new assessment growth, if a portion of that will be dedicated towards debt service in the future, or as a fallback situation or option in the future when that happens. So I just put this in here, but it's showing a zero now because there's certainly additional work that needs to be done around that. We're also proposing that we work with our partner, the hoteliers, NHA, on increasing hotel tax to 1%. The process takes a bit, and I'll have Ms. Samra speak to that.
Certainly. We presented on the taxation agreement between the city and the NHA earlier this year in another context. Amendments to that agreement will take a considerable amount of time. It requires negotiations between the city and NHA to take a look at increasing the rate and looking at for what purposes. They have an internal governance system that needs to be respected, and they will go back to their membership and determine whether or not they're in support of making such an increase, and those negotiations will need to take place over the coming months.
Thank you. So if the hotel tax doesn't work out, I will speak to how I would cover that or how we would cover that. The Strategic Infrastructure Reserve was set up in December. Two funding sources for that, the gaming funds or the casino money, and then the Fortis. At this point, we're simply directing the gaming aspect of it. The $2.4 million is what we are redirecting towards debt service here. Under general revenues, we currently collect about $7 million a year towards general capital projects. We are recommending that we take about $2 million out of that allocation and use about 1.6 here. We'll replace the $2 million using the Community Works Fund, which is funded through gas tax. We receive about $4.3 million a year for that. And when it comes, it remains unallocated and sits in a reserve. And that reserve, as of now, has about $7 million sitting in unallocated. So in this case, we would use about 1.6 of that 2 million, which leaves us with a buffer of about $400,000 to take care of either if we don't get the 1% in place in time, or if it doesn't work, at least we have a fallback situation. We are also recommending that we take payments that we receive from the Nanaimo Port Authority for $400,000 a year in the future. Right now we have about $2 million sitting in a reserve, so that money will be used for other projects, and I think it's already spoken for. But for the future, redirect that $400,000 towards this debt service. So these will be the funding sources. Like I said, these are existing funding sources. The city does not require to go elsewhere. And there is, I think, a point to be made that when you are looking at these numbers, the only amount that you would say is coming from taxes is the 1.6. Everything else is coming from funding sources that are not taxes. And so this is not totally relying on property taxes, but casino money, hotel tax, and PLs. So will the event center require an operating subsidy from the city? I've already said because we're using existing revenue sources, there will be no requirement for, we're using a model that has an operating or revenue stabilization fund, so there will be no requirement for us to subsidize the event center. What is the impact to property taxes? The construction of an event center and the supporting infrastructure will not increase property taxes. And that's the point I tried to make earlier on, where all the funding sources identified at this point are already existing. There is no change in our taxes, so there will not be a requirement for us to increase our property taxes. What other projects or city services will be cut because of the event center? No projects or services will be cut. If you remember, I said when we redirect the $2 million, it's getting replaced by a transfer, an equivalent transfer from the Community Works Fund, which we get $4.3 million a year, and we'll utilize about $2 million of that so that there is no cut to projects. In any case, there is no cut to services because the amount that we're transferring was not going into services, it was going into projects, and that's being replaced by the transfer from the Community Works Fund.